Welcome to the Bard 1 to 80 Skills Guide. In this guide we'll cover all of your skills as you train to sing the song of your people better than the rest of them, but also hopefully kill your enemies along the way. Watch as you go from this to this. This guide is framed in the mindset of players completely new to Final Fantasy XIV, or the MMO genre in general. In that same vein, this will merely be an overview of the actions and how to use them. Optimal rotations are better left to their own in-depth videos just due to how much complexity is involved in perfect openers and overall rotations. We will, however, be crafting rotations as we go, to help new players understand what goes through creating openers and give them a foothold to push themselves into being able to do it on their own. The goal is to drop players in on the ground level so they can make strides to improve themselves. All tooltips will be shown at the level cap for each section. Level 50 for A Realm Reborn, level 60 for Heavensward, 70 for Stormblood, and then finally at level 80 for Shadowbringers. I also recommend all players add Sprint and Limit Break to their hotbars, both found in the General tab of your Actions menu. And as for how my hotbars build, it'll make sense at 80. Just put skills on your hotbars in a way you feel comfortable using as you're leveling. Everyone has their own way of doing things. With that all out of the way, let's begin. Level 1. Heavy Shot. This basic attack does 180 potency to your target. This attack will remain your main attack all the way until max level. Not much to say here, but we quickly get Level 2, Heavier Shot, and Straight Shot. Heavier Shot is a trait, or passive ability. Heavy Shot has been given an added effect. There is now a 20% chance that hitting an enemy with Heavy Shot will give you the Straight Shot Ready effect for 10 seconds. This is the only way we are able to use our new skill, Straight Shot. Does an attack of 200 potency. This isn't a huge potency increase, but it's still better than Heavy Shot. Use it whenever it procs. A proc is shown by the glowing border, like so. Another reason to get used to using your procs now is for later on. Proc usage gets way stronger than a 20 potency gain at higher levels. Level 4, Raging Strikes. This is our first off-global ability, or OGCD. On an 80-second recast timer, this increases your damage by 10% for 20 seconds. Keep this on cooldown. This doesn't help much right now, but it will help a lot when you get further on. Stronger hits are always stronger hits, no matter how weak. Level 6, Venomous Bite. Does 100 potency on hit and puts a damage over time effect, or dot, on the enemy for 30 seconds. The dot will do 30 potency per tick. In this game, dots are on the server tick, which is every 3 seconds. So at 30 seconds long, the dot will hit an enemy 10 times, for a big 300 potency. In total, this does 400 potency, which is big. The only issue is, to get that whole damage, you need the enemy to live 30 seconds, which is a very long time at early levels. Time to kill is very short. However, it only needs 9 seconds to be stronger than Heavy Shot, so be sure to use this before Heavy Shot, as it is almost guaranteed to be stronger in even the worst situations. In addition, this is especially useful on multiple enemies. Treat this as an AoE, putting it on every enemy that is aggroed to you, especially as a tank is moving. Later on, when we have more attack options, you want to use your better attacks when everything is staying still to hit the most enemies you can. So dot enemies as everyone is running along. This will become more important down the line, so if your dungeon tanks give you the chance, take the practice. At level 6, we get our first roll action, Leg Graze. Some of these are actually useful, so be sure to make room on your hotbars for them. I will not be going into detail about them, however. We also get Second Wind at level 8, and Foot Graze at level 10. Level 12, Bloodletter. This is an OGCD on a 15-second cooldown, doing 150 potency to the targeted enemy. Because of this very short cooldown, you can basically spam this. Use it between any GCDs it's available for. It's free damage and very frequent damage. Level 15, Repelling Shot. You may have noticed you didn't immediately get this skill. Anytime this happens, it's because it comes from your class or job quests. You should be doing those anyway, but this just gives you one more reason to do them. Be sure to keep up to date with class and job quests at all time. As for Repelling Shot, this skill sucks! On a 30-second cooldown, you are able to jump back 10 yalms from the current target. You need to be in melee range to use this, which is where you want to be near anyway to be in healer range typically. My solution to the skill is just walk. Just walk. There is the rare case where being able to jump back from an enemy quickly is useful, but it's very rare. Just walk. You might find some uses I don't, but in general it's just not very good. Level 18, Quick Nock. Our first AoE does 150 potency to all enemies in a cone in front of you. Let me say this for the people in the back. Quick Nock is a melee skill. You have to be close to the enemies for it to actually hit them all. The cone starts from you, not the enemies. This is a very common thing I see bards do. They Quick Nock from all the way back from here, instead of right here in front of the enemies. If you stand far away, you might as well not even be using Quick Nock, and use single target attacks instead. Anyway, let's get back to the actual uses. At 150 potency, this is better than Heavy Shot and Straight Shot on only 2 enemies. Venomous Bite, if we recall, is 400 potency if it gets the entire duration. On 3 enemies or more, Quick Nock is entirely stronger even when it gets the full duration of the dot. So as I said, if the tank is pulling multiple packs, dot the enemies as you run, but once the packs of enemies have stopped moving, start spamming Quick Nock until everything is dead. Also, keep Raging Strikes up for AoE. AoE is strong on its own, but 10% damage on top of it is even better. Level 20, Increased Action Damage. This trait increases your damage by 10%. That's it. And while we're at it, at level 40, Increased Action Damage 2 is a 20% increase. At level 20, we get the roll action, Peloton, and at level 24, Head Graze. Level 30, Windbite. Deal 60 potency on hit and 40 potency dot for 30 seconds for 460 total potency. The initial hit is weaker than Venomous Bite, but as a whole, it is slightly stronger. For now, we use Venomous Bite first for normal enemies, since time to kill is still very low. Once enemies are starting to last the entire duration of dots, however, Windbite will be the better starting hit. This also works on bosses. They almost always last that long, making it better to Windbite than Venomous Bite. As before, Quick Nock is still always better on 3+ enemies. That 10 additional potency is hard to get and not worth it. At level 30, you will be able to undertake your first job quest to attain a soul stone, as well as your first job action. You must also complete all class quests from your guild. The other requirement is the level 20 main story quest, Self-Management. This takes place soon after joining a grand company. This won't be an issue on normal servers, but any server with the preferred status and Road to 70 buff will likely lead new players to be 30 long before this story threshold is met. Level 30, Mage's Ballad. Now that you're a bard, we get our major mechanic. We now have our song gauge, which will act to be a timer and show when our songs have our effects triggered. We can see this in effect when using Mage's Ballad. Let's go over its effects. The first is that this is an attack on an 80-second recast timer. It does 100 potency to the current target. This song will last for 30 seconds. Upon hit, you will give everyone in range a 1% damage up buff for the duration of the song, except for yourself. This buff will be lost and reapplied for anyone moving out of range or into range. 1% seems like a very tiny amount, but 30 seconds is a long time, and it makes a lot more sense later. Now for the meat of this skill, the additional effect of 20% chance to proc Repertoire for every tick of your dot. so each dot has 10 chances to trigger Repertoire over the entire duration. What Repertoire does is automatically reset the recast timer of Bloodletter, so you end up getting a lot more Bloodletters during Ballad. Theoretically, you could do a GCD, Bloodletter, GCD, Bloodletter, GCD, Bloodletter, and so on. While under Mage's Ballad, be absolutely sure Bloodletter stays on cooldown because you can get a lot of procs. So now we have a good number of skills, so we should craft our first opener. Openers set the pace for the whole fight, and it'll help you build muscle memory as you level. Openers are ideal for boss fights, and AoE is a lot more freeform. Let's go through our first one, step by step. Raging Strikes, Windbite, Bloodletter, Mage's Ballad, Venomous Bite, Heavy Shot spam into infinity. We're already starting to train to use our level 80 opener as early as now, but we're missing a lot of key skills. What's good at 80 is mostly good at 32 anyway. As such, we start with the Raging Strikes right into Windbite, no pause. Try to time your first hit with as the tank pulls. Start with a Heavy Shot if you're not comfortable with timing your Raging and Windbite. We then weave Bloodletter into Mage's Ballad to get the free damage before we get any Repertoire procs from Mages, which we want up for it to start its work. Put up our other dot and we have nothing left but Heavy Shot, so spam away. Most of our opener is likely going to be Bloodletter and Heavy Shot, since Mage's Ballad will constantly refresh it. React to procs of Repertoire and Straight Shot, and use them immediately so you don't overwrite them and lose potency. At level 32, we get our final roll action, Arm's Length. Level 35, the Warden's Paeon. This buff is on a 45-second cooldown and is extremely situational. Putting this on a player will remove the next negative effect they receive automatically. It has a 30-second timer and will only remove one effect. If the player already has a negative effect on them, it will remove that effect. You can also place this buff on yourself. This is basically Bard's version of Asuna, the healer ability that removes negative effects. Because of this, you won't see much use of this. Usually you can only Asuna players' mistakes, but there are sometimes debuffs that are unavoidable. If you see one that you can cleanse, go for it. Level 38, Barrage. This is our final archer skill. On an 80-second recast, this triples the number of hits your next weapon skill does. You have 10 seconds to use a skill after activating this buff, so you basically triple the potency of whatever attack you do next. There's only one skill you're going to use this on, however, because of the next effect. You are also granted Straight Shot ready for 10 seconds, so anytime you use Barrage, make sure your next GCD is Straight Shot. This pushes it to be 600 potency every 80 seconds, which is a pretty hefty boost. Additional note, this does not affect Quick Nock. You can't get 3 Quick Knocks from using Barrage. Level 40, Army's Paeon. This is our second song, working very similarly to Mage's Ballad. On an 80-second cooldown, it does 100 potency to the target and gives everyone in range a 3% direct hit rate buff. Once again, there's a 20% chance to get Repertoire procs. This Repertoire does things differently though. Notice these 4 musical notes on the song gauge. Up to a max of 4 stacks, Repertoire gives you a 4% reduced recast time, up to 16% for the duration of Paeon. This song is weaker than Mage's Ballad, so we want to use it second. We also want to not overwrite songs. We cannot sing both songs at the same time, so we want to wait until the other is at its end to use the other. Ideally, use the next song the moment the previous one ends, at about 1 second left. This becomes more important later. Level 45, Rain of Death. This skill shares the same recast as Bloodletter, which is 15 seconds. You can only use one or the other. Rain of Death is only 20 potency weaker than Bloodletter, and is thus stronger on as few as 2 enemies. This also gives us a new skill interaction because Bloodletter and Rain of Death share the same recast timer. Mage's Ballad will refresh Rain of Death too. So as I mentioned before, while the tank is pulling enemies, especially if multiple groups of enemies, you can dot a bunch of enemies. Once the tank has stopped running, you can start Quick Nock spamming. We also want to put up Mage's Ballad in order to be able to spam Rain of Death. Watch closely to the footage I've been showing you. I put up 6 dots to simulate an average multi-pull. You may actually get more. Look how many Rain of Deaths I get, and you'll get even more often the more dots you put on. Level 50, Battle Voice. On a massive 180 second cooldown, all nearby party members will get a 20% increased direct hit rate for 20 seconds. Except for you. You can also only use this when singing one of your songs. If you're not singing, you're not battle voicing. You want to basically use this on cooldown otherwise. It is especially important in openers, making sure everyone else has a much better start to their openers. This is a strong skill, just not for you. I recommend using it in solo instances too, just to practice your opener a few extra times. So very little new to add to our opener, but I feel that at level 50 it is a good time to do another opener. You won't be getting any new skills until you reach Heavensward, and you have all of the Realm Reborn patch content to get through, so let's go through it. Raging Strikes, Windbite, Bloodletter, Mage's Ballad, Venomous Bite, Battle Voice, Barrage, Straight Shot, and then Heavy Shot spam forever. We start with Raging Strikes since our biggest hits are gonna be first. If you're uncomfortable with the timing still, you can start with Heavy Shot still. Don't hit Raging until the tank is running to pull the boss. We immediately move into Windbite because of it being our stronger dot, so we want this up first. We move into our first double weave, Bloodletter to get the damage, and then Mages to get a song up. We may also immediately get a tick of repertoire, resetting Bloodletter. We want to spend any extra Bloodletters you get as you go through our next GCDs. Which, the next GCD, is Venomous Bite to get our other dot working. The huge hits, remember. In one final weave, we Battle Voice to buff our team and activate Barrage for us to get a free Straight Shot, which we immediately use. At this point, we have nothing left, so we spam Heavy Shot over and over. Use Straight Shot procs once you have them. You may have already noticed that Bard is very freeform because of these procs. You need to react on the fly to extra Bloodletters and Straight Shot procs. This becomes more and more important as you level up. Keep on practicing your skills until you get to Heavensward, and get these next ones. Level 52, the Wanderer's Minuet and Pitch Perfect. This is our third and final song. It works the same as the other two, but gives everyone a 2% crit rate buff. It also comes with a new form of repertoire. You can stack 3 repertoire stacks, as denoted by the 3 arrows on your song gauge. This connects to our other new skill, Pitch Perfect. This gets stronger and stronger the more stacks of repertoire we have. At 1 stack, it does a tiny 100 potency. At 2 stacks, it does 250 potency. And at 3, a huge 450 potency. So we want to, every chance we get off Pitch Perfect at 3 stacks. And because the recast is only 3 seconds, we can basically immediately use Pitch Perfect again the moment we have 3 stacks. And because it's an OGCD ability, we can use it very easily. At the end of our Wanderer's timer, use whatever stacks we have, no matter how many we have. We will lose these stacks if we do not spend them at the last moment, then immediately weave into our next song, which should be Mage's Ballad. Speaking of, let's go into song order. For single target, the song order is Wanderer's Minuet, Mage's Ballad, and 20 seconds of Army's Paeon. Why only 20 seconds? Because this song order is also the order of power for our songs. Armies is by far our least powerful song in single target situations. And because of the recast timers being only 80 seconds, it rounds out perfectly. 30 seconds of Wanderers, 30 of Mages, and 20 of Armies is 80 seconds, letting us have 100% song uptime as long as there are targets to hit. For AoE, Mages is our strongest because of Rain of Death spam, then Army's Paeon, and then last is Wanderer's Minuet. Huge single target burst, but very low AoE effect. Level 54, Empyreal Arrow. On a tiny 15-second recast, this does a 230 potency attack, all around better than Bloodletter, but does not get refreshed by Mage's Ballad. Throw it out after Bloodletter in single target situations, and keep it on cooldown. Make sure it's in Raging Strikes where you can, however. Level 56, Iron Jaws. A weak 100 potency, but an amazingly strong effect. This skill will refresh your dots to their max timers. Because of this, you can have essentially infinite dots. You don't want to use this often though. Ideally, refresh your dots when they have 1 to 2 seconds left, or immediately after you put up Raging Strikes because of how snapshotting works. Damage calculations are done for a dot the moment you put it on an enemy, so putting up buffs midway through a dot will not buff the dot. It will, however, buff the entire dot if you refresh the dot right before a buff ends. So if a buff runs out immediately after applying a dot, the entire dot still gets that buff. So after putting up buffs, use Iron Jaws to refresh your dots, especially on bosses, since they're going to last for several minutes. Level 60, Sidewinder. On a 60-second recast, this is another powerful off-global ability. On its own, it only does 100 potency. However, it gains an extra 100 potency per dot you inflict on the enemy. Because you should be using both of your dots, you're almost always guaranteed to get the full 300 potency on the enemy. In AoE situations, just blow it however you like. You'll probably only get the 200 potency since you want to be spreading your dots onto a bunch of enemies, but it's something to throw out. Now that we have our Heavensward toolkit, our opener will take some major changes. Every single one of our new skills is added into it, so let's go over it now. Raging Strikes, Windbite, Bloodletter, the Wanderer's Minuet, Venomous Bite, Empyreal Arrow, Battle Voice, Heavy Shot, Heavy Shot, Heavy Shot, Barrage, Straight Shot, Sidewinder, Heavy Shot, Bloodletter, Iron Jaws, Empyreal Arrow, and Heavy Shot spam takes over. I'm sure some of this does not make sense to you, so let's explain it. We start the same up to replacing Mage's Ballad with Wanderer's Minuet. Because this is the stronger song, it's better to use this. We then use Venomous Bite like normal. We find another change after this, however, with using Empyreal Arrow and Battle Voice in a weave. This is to get the cooldown going, and buff our allies like normal. Here's the weirdest part of our opener. We do 3 heavy shots in a row. Feel free to replace them with straight shot procs if you get them. This does a few things. It delays to wait for everyone in your group to put up party buffs, and also delays to wait for pitch perfect procs, which we don't want to overcap on repertoire, so in the time it takes to do these 3 heavy shots, we will likely get a pitch perfect out. We might also get more afterwards, which is why our weaves are all single weaves after this. So for the barrage after this, we can weave it with pitch perfect to get both out in time for the barraged straight shot. We follow this up with Sidewinder into another heavy shot. We waited this long for both party buffs and because of the short cooldown compared to our other skills. By this point, Bloodletter has come back up, so we throw it out. The final big change is after this. Iron Jaws is used here right as Raging Strikes is about to end. Timed right, it'll snapshot the dot with the Raging Strikes buff and give us a full reset of our dots. From here, we just spam Heavy Shot and start rotating our songs as Wanderers runs out. Keep on practicing, especially this opener, because it's not going to change at all all the way up until level 80. That's right, this is it. Sure, we'll get buffs that slightly change effects, but we don't change our button strokes in general. Skills might upgrade to stronger ones, we might get more procs for repertoire, but this basic opener is forever. You have the next 20 levels to practice now. That's another huge reason why this opener is the way it is, practicing for the final opener we'll use at max level. So now, let's move on to Stormblood. Level 62, Troubadour. On a 120-second recast, this is a powerful defensive skill. For 15 seconds, all damage taken is reduced by 10% for everyone this is applied to. Put this out whenever a boss is going to do raid-wide damage. In dungeons, use it in trash pulls when the tank pulls a lot of enemies. This is an extra cooldown for them. Whichever way you use it though, make sure to use it. It's very useful and powerful. Level 64, Bite Mastery, Caustic Bite, and Storm Bite. Bite Mastery automatically updates our dots to be much stronger versions. Venomous Bite becomes Caustic Bite with an attack potency of 150 and a dot of 40 potency for 30 seconds. In total, this is 550 potency. Windbite becomes Storm Bite with a hit of 100 potency and a dot of 50 potency for 30 seconds. In total, 600 potency. Simply put, this is a big damage boost. However, there is a hidden effect that the game does not mention anywhere I can find. Look at your songs. There was a 20% chance to trigger repertoire. Now it's 40% chance. This means we'll be getting a lot more Pitch Perfects and Bloodletters than before, in addition to more of a guarantee of 4 stacks during Army's Paeon. A bigger buff than the game even tells you it is. Level 66, Nature's Minne. On a 90-second recast, you increase the HP recovery a player receives by 20% for 15 seconds. Even more so than Troubadour, give this to the tank during trash pulls. 20% is a huge increase to heals, so keeping the tank alive becomes a lot easier for the healer. You can also use this in boss fights on other targets, or yourself, if someone is taking a lot of extra damage due to mistakes. Just make the life of the healer even easier. Level 68, Enhanced Imperial Arrow. We're gonna get even more repertoire stacks now because that's what this does. It makes every Imperial Arrow you do trigger repertoire. This means 2 extra procs per song, though we'll usually only want 1 during Army's Paeon, just to let it line up with Wanderer's Minuet. Also, this isn't listed on Imperial's tooltip. Bard tooltips are pretty messed up. Level 70, Straight Shot Mastery and Refulgent Arrow. This is a simple, but very strong potency increase to Straight Shot. Refulgent Arrow is a massive 330 potency per hit, and since you get a triple hit on Barrage, that's 990 potency. All of its effects are the same. It has a really good animation though. I've been showing it off for a while now in other skills and previous openers. And yeah, like I said, that level 60 opener is the same still. We have some of our skills powered up, and an additional effect or 2. You got stronger, and gameplay is a lot more fast-paced thanks to this skill set. More specifically, are 2 uses of Imperial Arrow. It makes a lot more sense now that we have Enhanced Imperial Arrow. It ends up giving us at least 2 stacks of Pitch Perfect, in addition to whatever our dots give us. But otherwise, it's still the same. So let's get to our final set of skills in Shadowbringers. Level 72, Shadowbite. We finally have an AoE Sidewinder. It shares the same 60-second recast as it, and will put both on cooldown upon using either one, and works the same way. 100 potency on hit, but each dot on the enemy will increase the potency of it by 60 potency. So 160 potency for one dot, and 220 potency for both. It will hit all enemies within 5 yalms of the original target. The main target is also the only one that matters for calculating the damage of Shadowbite. You do not need to put 2 dots on every enemy for it to get the full damage on all enemies. So in a trash pull, make sure one enemy has both dots on it as you're running with the tank. Dot a bunch of other enemies as normal to be able to get repertoire procs, but be sure to have at least one enemy with both dots on it, so you have a very strong Shadowbite between Quick Knocks and Rains of Death. Level 74, Enhanced Quick Nock. Speaking of Rain of Death, every Quick Nock has a 30% chance of resetting the cooldown of Bloodletter and Rain of Death now. Between this and Mage's Ballad, you're going to be constantly using Rain of Death. This section of skills was to massively buff our AoE ability, but still plenty of RNG attached to it. Just hope to get a good RNG set whenever you do a dungeon. Level 76, Bite Mastery II. This trait allows Storm Bite, Caustic Bite, and Iron Jaws to trigger straight shot ready for even more Refulgent Arrows. It's also a 35% chance, which is higher than Heavy Shot's 20% only. But speaking of Heavy Shot, Level 76, Burst Shot. Heavy Shot is now buffed up to a nice 230 potency, and has the straight shot proc chance buffed to 35% too, to be in line with your other skills having 35%. These aren't too big of buffs, but they're helpful enough and will overall increase your minimum damage. Level 78, Enhanced Armies Paeon. This is a big one, and is a tooltip you can only view from the traits menu because of how big it is. This is a buff to Armies Paeon that allows you to keep some of the effects of it when you swap songs, to put it simply. However, the scaling is atrocious. Absolutely terrible at that. You basically need to get all 4 stacks of repertoire for it to be of any effect. It will last for 10 seconds regardless of the number of stacks you get. You can receive this effect whether you use another song immediately or not. If you swap songs during Armies Paeon, you will get the buff immediately. But if you let Armies Paeon run out, it will go into storage. You will have 30 seconds to use a song to get the effect before you lose it entirely. Don't go out of your way to try and get 4 stacks of repertoire. Delaying your song cycle will cause you more problems than help, even if you get 4 stacks of repertoire by delaying it. Take what you can get, play the same as always. Level 80, Soul Voice and Apex Arrow. Soul Voice gives us a new gauge attached to the song gauge. The only way to increase the gauge is gaining 5 for each repertoire proc. So it's heavily RNG based, aside from Imperial Arrows. We only have one skill to spend this gauge on, Apex Arrow. Apex has a base of only 120 potency, and is a GCD. It costs, at minimum, 20 gauge to use, and will use all of the gauge to fire a single shot, and is a very huge AoE. How huge? Well, the entire distance from me to the training dummy. The thing is, though, you don't want to use it the moment you have 20 gauge. The attack gets stronger and stronger the more gauge you have, up to a maximum of 600 potency. That's 5 times the power. So ideally, hold onto your gauge as much as you can. Try to be in the upper half of the gauge at all times, except for the final boss. Once it is about to die, feel free to blow your gauge at whatever number it is, as long as it's over 50. No reason to hold gauge at that point if it's stronger than Refulgent Arrow. You may also consider to use the gauge as low as 40 points for AoE. 240 is a pretty powerful AoE hit. but 600 is also way higher. So where possible, stay pretty high on your gauge, and use it at 100. If Raging Strikes is up, feel free to use it at 90 gauge. Be careful not to overcap though. 100 is your absolute max. Suspend the gauge the moment you hit 100. Even if you do lose a couple repertoires at 100 gauge, it is absolutely worth it to go for the 100 gauge Apex Arrow. And once again, our opener has not changed in the slightest. We will just use Apex Arrow once we get high on our gauge, which probably won't even be high enough until after we get into Mage's Ballad. Hopefully by now, you have a decent grasp on Bard and its flexible rotation. Thank you for watching my Bard 1 to 80 skills guide. Feel free to give feedback or ask questions on what might still be confusing to you. My goal is to help players improve in whatever ways I can. Take care, and have fun in your adventures across Eorzea. May the power of an Nidhogg's lay waste to your enemies.